super excited to get into today's episode of Get Up 10 with my guest, Jon Costa. We had a really fun conversation, a really great conversation. We talked about a lot of different topics, so I can't wait for you guys to hear it. A little bit about Jon is that he is from Rhode Island. He is in ministry. He is a comedian and also actor. He's going to be in 2 upcoming movies. So I'm really excited to just share this discussion with y'all. I hope that you smile. I hope that the light bulb goes off for you. I hope that you take some notes. I hope that you hear something that you decide to share it with somebody else because it might help them too. So without further ado, let's get into this discussion with Jon Costa. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Get Up 10 Podcast. I'm here with Jon Costa and I'm super excited for this discussion because this is his first podcast. So I don't know. I'm feeling like VIP. Like, good morning. It is
Good.
morning right now when we're recording. So good morning.
Are you on the same time zone as me? Is it 9:30 where you are?
Yeah, I'm in
Right.
Florida and you're in Rhode Island, right?
Yep.
Yeah, East Coast. I have been to Rhode Island because I grew up playing basketball and literally basketball brought me from Maine to Florida and everywhere in between on the East
Okay.
Coast. So I have been
Okay.
to Rhode Island before. So wait, Rhode Island is not like a common state. So are you from there? Have you always been there or did you move
Yes.
there?
So
Okay.
for those of you who don't know where Rhode Island is, so there's Connecticut, so there's New York, then there's Connecticut, then there's Rhode Island. If you're north, wherever the Patriots play, my state is 45 minutes away from there. You always got to explain that to people.
That's a good way of putting it. That gives me a visual as well. Even though I've been there, so I know, but that's true. Ugh, Patriots territory.
I'm not a
um,
Patriots fan. I'm not a Patriots
okay.
fan, so don't hate me. I'm not one.
And I'm not even a football fan, so I don't know. I think that's just a New Yorker in me. But
Oh boy. Oh boy.
anyway, I'm super excited to have you on this podcast episode today. And I started to Get Up 10 for 2 reasons. And one is to just encourage people to get up every time life knocks you down, get back up again. And also just to encourage people to be themselves, to be authentic, to just show up and not always be so concerned about being perfect or being all put together and having filters and all that stuff, to just be yourself. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the 2 motives behind my podcast. And I'm so excited to be able to share my platform with other people because I have my story and I tell it proudly. However, my story might not reach somebody, but your story might be able to speak to somebody in a whole nother way or more
Hmm.
specifically than my story ever could. And so that's why I love to bring guests on here. So with that being said, let's get right into it. How has life knocked you down?
Mm. Let's talk about it. So I think
Let's
for a
talk.
while, when you say life knocks you down, I had a Gideon mindset, where as if like God was trying to send me places, and I didn't think I was good enough to get there. So I want to say maybe for the past 10 to 12 years, I was just a Gideon in a wine cellar. I didn't think I was good enough to do anything. I didn't think I was good enough to go anywhere. I didn't think I was good enough to be with anybody. Um, I definitely didn't think I was a good father at all. Um, so I want to say life got the best of me. I started to push everything out of my mind by putting work before everything. That was like my everybody has like an addiction, like drugs or mine was work. Mine was if I can just get to work, um, I can just like shut everything out. And so with that, I think that's how life knocked me down was just putting work before God. That's how I want to say that's how life knocked me down because it was a struggle. Like everybody's like, oh, you always work and you always work and you always seem happy, but and the inside it's like nobody really knows what you're going through.
Yeah, that's real. So I'm about to get in your business.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned not good enough to be a father. So
Yeah.
how many children do you have?
I have one.
Okay. And it's a girl or boy?
It's a girl. So I
Ah,
I I have one. but I'd like to say I have three because there's two other ones who are not mine, but I like to when I'm around them, I feel like they're
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. Okay, got you. And you talked about, is it fair to say that you were a workaholic?
Yes,
Okay.
some would say I was a Jamaican because I had like 10 jobs.
I'm cracking up because I love Jamaican people and Jamaican food. But anyways, what were you doing at the time for work? Or are you still doing that or?
So actually, tomorrow is like my last day with that company. So
Oh.
I was in food and service. I was doing security. I was working overnight. I was driving trucks. I was doing any and everything to stay busy.
Hmm. So this is like a side story, side note that I was not planning on getting into, but it just came to my mind. So a few months ago, I don't even know if I'm just gonna go with this. A
Okay.
few months ago, I was talking to this guy and we were thinking about getting into a relationship, and he was in that work mode, grind mode. Like anytime he had a chance to pick up a shift, um, he would, even to the point where it's like we had plans and he would cancel because he decided to go to work. And it got to the point where he actually ended up in a car accident because he was working so much and he wasn't
Hmm.
sleeping, and he ended up like driving into a pole. And I feel like that can be a thing for men. I feel, is it safe to say like for men where you just like throw yourself into your work and it becomes like the thing, like you, that's like, I don't know.
So for from a men's standpoint, I think it's more as if like we have to have a mindset of we have to have enough money to support what we want to do. So, all
Mm-hmm.
right. So, I guess if we're gonna dive, we're gonna deep dive in this category. Then,
Oh
well,
yes,
we're probably gonna go all over the place. So,
probably.
and this is like this is like such a touchy, sensitive category for men because, like like TD Jake says, if a man is at home, then the household is in trouble. But when he works all the time, there's not enough time to spend with the family. But for I want to say maybe 40 to 50% of men, they want to be able to live comfortably. That means make sure there's a roof over the head. There's clothes on the back. There's a car. There's some sort of transportation. And then on top of that, it's like when you're in a relationship now, it's just like I don't want to say it's another added expense, but it's like you want to make sure that when y'all go on a date, it's to the point where it's like I got it. I don't know about guys, but for me, it's like if whenever I take like my lady on a date, I want to pay for it. I don't want you to come out of pocket. And I don't know why. That's just the thing. Like I don't think I've ever been on a date and where a lady's pulled out a card first and was like, "Hey, let me pay." Maybe in the past, but now it's just to a point where it's like, "No, I don't want you to pay. Like, let me pay." And it's not like I want to show off all the money I got. It's just like that's the gentleman in me. It's like, let me pay. You have, I know you got to do what you got to do. So, let me pay. Let me take care of this one.
Yeah. And I think that's also, well, it's part of being a gentleman and also part of being a provider. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. Has your lady ever complained about you working too much? Like, has that been an issue in your relationship or
Um,
not really? Or
I mean, some things, you don't have to say to notice it. So I did, during the summertime, I was at an amphitheater and it was like work kind of just, took over the summer. So it was kind of like our first summer ever, along with, my first summer having, my daughter with me. So it was like you got to try to balance it all. And it's like it's kind of tough to balance because you're at work at like 9 in the morning, you're not getting out till 12 in the morning. And then it's like, all right, well, I got to be a dad, I got to be a boyfriend. In no way, shape, or form do I want her to ever like if she like watches this podcast, I don't ever want her to think like, wow, this guy really thought I was an added expense. No, like, and then we're gonna we'll talk about her like we're gonna bring her up because she's
okay.
like she's special, but it's more so like it is a lot of, like I said, a lot of things don't need to be said to be said. Um, I did notice that work did start, because when you have concerts, it's not like it's like, all right, well, we're set up. I got to go home. No, because in my position as a manager, it's like you got to do the setup, and then while the concert's happening, you got to make sure everything's going good, and then you don't leave till all your staff leave. So at some point, I did kind of see it as like, all right, I think I'm working too much. I think it's time to reevaluate on how to do things a lot better, how to make more time. So I mean, that's why I'm leaving. I just had to make better life decisions and not have work take over. So instead of picking up this job and then trying to pick up another job, it's like, all right, I found one job where I can just have this one job, make enough to support everything that I want to do.
Yeah. And that's another thing I've noticed in my male friends is when they don't really have like a solid vision or direction for their lives, they'll just pick up like all these jobs or like whatever is good for the moment. And one of my friends I noticed recently, he had this mentality shift from like, I don't want a job anymore. I want a career. I want something that has like longevity. So that's cool. I think I'm happy for you that you are entering this new season, and
Yes,
I hope that it brings better life balance for you for sure.
thank you.
So tell me, how old is your daughter?
So my daughter is 9.
Okay.
She lives in a small town in Kingstree in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's tough. I'm not gonna say it's like it's easy. Like, a lot of people are like, well, you don't have your daughter with you, you have so much free time. It's not what everybody thinks. Like, I when I'm here at my house, I keep her door closed. So, not to just think of the memories of when she was here.
Yeah, that must be tough. And so does she, hmm, I'm trying to figure out how I want to get into this still. Because I still want to get a better picture of how life has knocked you down. So I'm kind of tempted to like, not, I shouldn't say tempted at because I am going to do it. I want to ask,
Yep.
like, do you remember the first time that you felt like you weren't enough or just moments that really like ingrained that into you? Like, where did that mentality come from?
As in being a father figure.
For you to say that like I'm not enough or I don't belong here, I'm not good enough. Like where do you have you ever thought back on like where that came from or any moments that
When you can see your daughter happy when you're not there.
hmm. So it was something that came later on in adulthood, not necessarily like as a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's when she's happy and it doesn't like involve daddy and you're just in that dark place. It's like, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I just didn't do a great job. So that's where that mentality comes from, and that stems off with with like a lot of things. That can be like any point in your life. Like when you're single for a while, it's just like, okay, am I just not good enough? Because you'll be on social media and you'll see like the awkwardest people together, and you be like, so they're together and I'm still single. Like there got to be something wrong. But when you reevaluate yourself, you kind of realize that the person that you're praying to be, you already are.
Hmm.
You just got to find that inside of you.
That's good. Okay. So you mentioned so your daughter's 9. She does not
Mhm.
live with you.
No,
So were you and her mother together at some point?
we
Or
was.
okay.
I
And
want I want to say when my daughter was 3, we kind of split.
okay. And do you want to talk a little bit more you don't have to go like into detail, but just like how did you meet her? Like did you think that she was the one at one point? Like was that breakup hard for you?
Um, yes. Yeah, it was a hard breakup. I don't want to say like now I think about it, but but at the time
Yeah.
it was a hard breakup because it's like you got that one gift that a lot of people wish they can have. Like you're a father.
Yeah. And then it's like taken away from you, right?
Yeah.
And being a father is, I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of being a mom. I love being a mom. I'm so grateful
Hmm.
for it. Um, was did you always want to be a dad? Like, did you have healthy father figures in your life growing up, or
Um, yes and no. Um, there's some things I want to touch on, but when people watch the podcast, I don't want them to think like, oh wow, that's how he really feels. So it's kind of like some things I'm just gonna like, tread lightly on. My dad was there, but I want to say the system got the best of him. And now I'm just gonna leave it at that.
okay? And did you have other healthy male figures in your life growing up as well?
Yeah, so I had a guy, Earl Lynch. He was like, my mom's husband. He was like somewhat of a good guy to, look up to, God rest his soul. I have a guy, Ronnie Matthews Jr. and Sr., who are like, they've been like male role models still to this day. Robert Stanley, my two brothers. I look up to them somewhat a lot.
That's good. I think, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a man, obviously, but I think that there is a difference when a man has like healthy male figures in his life. I think it definitely adds to who he is as a man. So I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear that. And I had another question. Oh, yes. Okay. So you shared with me that you're in ministry. And so have you always like had faith? Did you grow up in church or did that
Yeah.
happen later in
So
life?
we
Let's talk about that.
so we grew up in church, but when I say we grew up in church, it was like Monday prayer, Wednesday Bible study, Friday choir rehearsal, Sunday church. And then, at one point it was like, God, I want to go to hell because this is just way too much church for me as a kid. We was doing all that stuff. And then it was like at one point it was like me, my sister, and my two brothers. We were like a choir, and I'm just like, this ain't it. Like at the time it was, when I really look at it, that wasn't it at all. But I always knew I had a calling. I just didn't want to pick it up at the time.
Yeah. And I'm laughing because I just spoke with Kevin Nevek, and he said the same thing. Like, if this is it, I want to go to hell. So I'm cracking up. But I also feel like when you do have a call on your life, like the enemy definitely tries to come in and throw anything that he can at you to
Yeah.
prevent you from getting to that calling. So looking back on your faith journey, what are some of the attacks that you've had to overcome or are overcoming?
I think the biggest one was suicide thoughts.
Mm,
I want to say that was like the biggest one. When the enemy is bothering you, you're doing something right.
yeah.
When he's not bothering you, then you're doing a lot of things wrong. So it was just that I think one of the things I struggled with was pride. I had a lot of pride. I
Mm,
thought I was too good. I didn't want to ask anybody for help. I always wanted to like show off. Like I had a lot of pride, and and God will kind of like humble you to realize like you ain't got everything, bro. Like I had a new car. I was showing it off, and then I was like, all right, cool. Like I wasn't making car payments, and then I left the barber shop one day. I was looking fresh. I got in a car, and this lady knocks on my window. She's like, "Hey, we're here to repossess your car." And I'm like, "Oh man." So I'm like, all right. I'm gonna humble myself.
so I love that you touched on that because I feel like pride is such a stronghold in a lot of people's lives, and pride is so destructive. It's very destructive, and I feel like we don't always talk about it enough. Um, Personally, I feel like pride. So you and I, we don't know each other that well. So let me tell
Yep.
you, um, I'm currently like walking through a divorce, and that's due to domestic violence,
Mm,
amongst other factors. And I strongly feel that pride was one of the factors in why my marriage did not succeed. Because there was, a, personally, I feel like for my daughter's father, like I wanted him to humble himself and ask for help, and hopefully that would have helped us to move forward, and just never happened. And I feel like And I think he was, it will acknowledge too that there was times where his pride definitely was a hindrance or just got in the way of doing what needed to be done. So I definitely want to talk a little bit more about pride because that is one example of
Pride
getting your
is
car taken away. But how else was pride manifesting in your life?
because as a man, you don't want to ask for help because it seems like you're weak. You want to
Mm,
make it seem like, I got it. In the relationship I'm in now, I think that's what like one of the things I had to realize is like as a man, you're not looking weak when you're asking for help. And that's just for any man. Like if any man you know, watches this podcast, you're not a weak man at all if you ask for help because it's normal. It's so normal to ask for help. And I think that's the biggest struggle. Not and I don't want to say in all men and black men. Black men do not like to ask for help. And maybe it's because at so many times, you get let down to the point where it's like, I got it, or you just want to have I can do this on my own. I got it. I don't really need nobody's help, but help is like you need help.
yeah. And I heard ooh, I can't remember who it was. It was an older man, not older, but like probably like 50s or 60s. I don't know, a black man, a
Mhm.
well-seasoned black man, I'll say, someone with wisdom.
Yep.
It was on a group call for a community that I was in, and he was saying how like there is a cycle that you allow to take place when you accept help, because there's somebody who's ready to help you, but they can't if you don't allow them to.
Yeah.
And then so when you allow them to help you, it just allows the continuous cycle because I mean it allows the cycle to continue because there's like I said, there's somebody who wants to help you, and then there's you who needs the help, and then you when you receive the help, just allows it to it
Mm.
just allows it to
So,
continue. And
I'm sorry. So one of my aunts had recently passed away this year, and her niece had flew up, and we was at her house, and it was like, hey, if you need anything, you let me know. And I was like, there's a few things I need, but it's like I don't want it. And she's like, in order for me to be blessed, you have to accept the blessing.
exactly.
So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I know I did like a TikTok or something on this like probably like 2 years ago at this point, but it's so true. It's like there is somebody waiting to help you. And then also when you are helped, it's part of being a blessing. Like, because when you have received much, I think it puts you in the position to be able to give much, but you
Hmm.
can't give if there's nobody willing to receive. So it's this
Yeah,
cycle that I think I would encourage anybody who's listening to take a moment and ask themselves like what season am I in? Am I in my giving season where I have much to give, or am I
yeah,
in my receiving season where I need to allow others in to bless me and help me? So I'm glad we touched on that. But yeah, pride is heavy stuff. And I feel like if you don't humble yourself, you will be humbled because I've experienced that in my own life as well, where I'm trying to do things my way and thinking my way is the best and being hard
yeah,
headed. And then God has to come through like, mm-mm, this ain't it.
yeah,
So I'm happy that we
definitely.
got to touch on that a little bit because I feel like we don't have enough discussions on pride and humility. And it's so important because pride is out here destroying a lot of good things. So
Sure, it is.
yeah, I'm happy we got to touch on that. So, oh, you did mention being suicidal, and that is something that I can relate to as well. So, when in the moment where those thoughts were the heaviest, what was going on?
There was just nobody around,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to talk to God.
Do you remember or feel like God was trying to talk to you and you were just shutting him out, or you just was
Yeah, at the time, I just wanted human contact.
that's real? I feel like that's something that I struggle, not struggle with, but like something that I think about as well in my faith walk. Cause it's like, oh, well, talk to God. But sometimes there is nothing like having another person's voice or touch or advice, because God does speak to us in a variety of different ways, but it's still important to have that human connection as well.
Yeah,
So I get that. Okay. So I think we can shift a little bit to how you got back up because I think we have a picture of some of the things that have knocked you down in life.
Hmm.
So, what has helped you to get back up, to be here and sit here with me and be comfortable enough to even share this stuff? And, uh,
Um,
yeah.
so if she was here, I would share the camera with her, but she is not here. So it is, and where I'm gonna shift a little bit, but I'm gonna jump back in the lane.
You're good.
Every man needs a woman. Like there is no such thing as like I can do this on my own. Like a man is not strong unless he has a woman. You can go up to any man who is single and be like, nah, I'm good. But deep down inside, they're really not. So um I want to say 6 months ago we met. Well, no, 7, 8 months ago. And this is like I was still like in my down phase, like trying to figure out like, you know, what's going on. And then this is gonna lead to like how I received my calling in ministry. So
Okay.
um we were starting a new season. I'm a drummer, I'm on a drum line, and she had, pulled up to practice. So, I slid into her TikTok DM because her son was a drummer, and I was like, hey, you know what? Here's my number. So we started talking. We started, you know, the dating phase. And one Sunday, she had invited me to church. That Sunday, I was gonna go to the church I normally go to, but I was like, I had no plans on going to church at all, like none. And she said, hey, she has screenshotted it. The lady who I know said, "Hey, bring John to church with you." So I was like, "Okay." So I had went to church that Sunday, and I went up for the altar call, and the lady, her name is Evelyn Stanley. She's a powerful woman of God. This is the lady who I was talking to at the altar. And she said, you're called to be a preacher, but you just feel like you're not good enough. And everything she said was hitting home. And so that's when I kind of like received my calling to ministry. But when I tell you that for the past 6 to 7 months, that this girl, her name is Alexis Renee, she is such a like I'm trying to like I get very emotional when people like want me to describe her because it's like such a surreal feeling. But she has been such like a rock, like a solid rock for me, and she's like giving me that push that I really needed in life to like be a better version of me. Like she's like, and like the time we've been together, she's seen me at my lowest, and now she's like seen me come out of it to like where I need to be. And I'm so like I thankful isn't like the word I could put to like describe her. There has to be like another level of like happiness to like put like wow, like she's like been like so man. Mm.
I love this. Give her flowers.
I tried to, but she's allergic.
Oh, I meant like not
No,
physically.
no, I know. But she's just like at at my at my lowest point, and I can remember at my lowest point in the relationship, it was like she's still been there. Like no, I'm not going anywhere. And I do tell some people what we've been through in like the past 6 to 7 months. I've seen couples go through in 3 to 5 years. So we've been through a lot. I'm not going to dive deep into it. That's like we kind of keep that locked in. But she, I don't know. She's just like I can definitely say she's heaven sent.
I love that. And recently I've been hearing in Genesis when God was creating and
Hmm.
how he said it's not good for man to be alone and I will create for him a suitable helper, something like that.
Mm,
And it sounds like you found your helpmate. So I love that.
definitely.
I want to ask as well, because you mentioned that she saw you, has seen you at your lowest. And another thing that I've heard from different guys is that they struggle being vulnerable around a woman because, or women, because in their moments where they have been honest and expressed their emotions, it's been met the wrong way. So, how do you feel like your lady has created a safe space for you?
Um, just by reassurance. I mean, I think reassurance needs to work like, kind of both ways. In a past relationship I was in, it was just like, just want to let you know, like I would just like kind of reassure them, like, hey, I'm not, I'm only with you. It's just only you. And then I got the same thing back, but then lo and behold, there was like two to three other guys that this person was talking to. So when you get into another relationship, you gotta, you just gotta trust and create that kind of safe space of reassurance. I mean, you can't. It's gonna suck because when you hear that, it's gonna bring you back to I've heard this before, and blase, blase, blah. But I'm trying not to jump off topic, but there's so many things that come to mind when you ask questions. But I'm trying to stay on topic.
Oh, let the spirit lead you. We got time. If we're here to talk, you don't know what you might say that somebody might need to hear. So,
But
you
as
know,
far as like a safe space, it's always like I'll come to her house. We're sitting in her driveway and literally we'll just talk. We'll go we'll go out to breakfast, go out to lunch, we'll go out to dinner, and we'll talk. And I think talking and kind of like opening up, not fully, but a little bit, and just kind of trusting them with what you're telling them. That's what kind of creates a safe space.
yeah, I love that. Communication is so key. The pastor that I grew up under says that communication is the lifeline for relationship.
This is
And
true.
also, I love the analogy that trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And
Mm,
what it feels like I'm hearing you say is that with each conversation, it's like another drop in the bucket, another drop,
yeah.
another drop. And that's
Hmm.
good because I one thing that I'm learning in this season is that like there is no need to like rush into a relationship or go 0 to 100. There is value in taking it one step at a time and just really building a firm foundation. So it sounds like that's what's taking place in your relationship, and I'm really happy to hear that.
Yes, definitely.
Yay! I love that. Is there anything else that you like to share about how it is that you've been able to get back up? How do you feel like you've been able to show up as a better father recently as well? Like, has there been any growth in that area?
Uh yes. Um I mean, granted, it's not like I can see my daughter every day, but when I can, I try to call her just, to check on her, let her know, hey, even though daddy's not here, I'm here. So just like trying to just keep that kind of connection is like, all right, I'm kind of comfortable in knowing that, I'm a good dad.
That's good. And I'm sure that all those little phone calls and check-ins do mean a lot to her.
Yeah.
And as far as, okay, so let's say there's somebody listening right now and they know that there's a call on their life, but they don't feel like they're good enough. What would you say to them?
Um, I would definitely say follow that call. I mean, the longer you wait, the call is just going to go to somebody else. And that was the thing that was like, prophesied over me was, that Sunday when I went to church, the first lady grabbed the mic and she was like, whatever you're doing, she's like, you need to do it and you need to do it in a hurry. And that was kind of like my case of, if I don't take this calling, it's going to go to somebody else. So like the longer you wait, I feel as though that calling is just not going to be there. Yes, it's always going to be over your life, but it's going to take a lot longer for God to get it to you.
Yeah, that's true. One thing that so my daughter's initials are NOW,
Mm,
and at
I
the
like that.
time when I was pregnant and even just as a new mom, I thought that like, oh, I love that because uh God is able to shift your life now and he could do things for you now. But after what I've been through, um, and this goes back to our conversation before, because when I got into the relationship with my daughter's father, I was very much in a prideful place, hard headed. Everybody was telling me like this guy is no good for you, and I was like,
Hmm.
no, I really think this is God. Like I'm gonna make it work, and we're gonna get married, and like we'll be all right. We'll figure things out as we go. And I just completely like ignored everybody's advice. I did not accept it because my heart was full of pride, thinking that my way was right. And so
Hmm.
God really humbled me through that experience after like leaving a domestic violence situation and looking back and just being grateful that God spared me because the situation that I was in probably would have only gotten worse over time. And some
Yeah.
people don't even make it out alive out of situations like that. So
Yeah.
I look back and I was humbled as well because not only did God bring me out of that, but like I really just was down to nothing. Like I had no money in my bank account. I had a newborn baby girl and yeah, moved back in with my parents. So it was a big humbling season, a big season of God, I'm so sorry. I had it all wrong. I was not listening to you.
Yeah.
And so because of that, my
Hmm.
perspective switched from like, oh, God is able to bless you now. God is able to change things for you now to, oh, you know what? Maybe NOW is actually for when God speaks, you better listen now
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
be obedient now.
Yeah.
So that just came
Definitely.
to mind when I was listening to you. For the rest of, well, not the rest of, but like the last serious question before we get into some fun questions.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mentioned this before, but another big part of Get Up 10 is all about authenticity and just being yourself and not being so worried about how you look or what you sound like or making sure that everything is perfect, but still just and showing up as yourself, period.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, what does it look like to you to live life with no filter and just be authentically yourself?
Um, just a big old goofball. That's like that's me. Like I try at times I try not to show it, but if you see me like in like my in a goofy phase, I'm being myself. Like that's how I am. And like a lot of people will like tell you like if I'm quiet, a lot of people will like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with him because I'm like happy, I'm outgoing, I'm goofy. I love country music, I love folk music. I don't listen to rap music. I love Christian music. That's me. Like so, living life with no filter, like that's just me. I still watch wrestling. Like that's it. Like I'm like at heart, I don't know that, but that's just me. Like that's how I am.
I love that. And have you ever been in situations where you felt like you couldn't be yourself, or people tried to like change you?
Yes, my last relationship. My
Hmm.
last relationship I was in, she wasn't comfortable with my weight. Um, there was a lot of things that she was very uncomfortable with, and it was people that were close to her that were kind of trying to tell me like, "Hey, open your eyes." So yeah, in certain situations, it was like my weight was like uncomfortable to her, like the way I looked was like uncomfortable to her, like change your appearance, change this, change that, and you go on and change everything for somebody, you lose yourself.
Exactly. 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 And are you on a weight loss journey? I feel like I've seen that on social media.
Yes.
Yeah. Do
So
you want to talk
I
about that?
for me, I remember one day I picked my daughter up from school. This is when I realized, like, all right, let's take this a little more serious. I was picking up my daughter from school, and I heard one kid whisper, "It's like, wow, why is his stomach so big?" I'm just like, no. So since then, it's just been like, all right, let's kind of do like let's look more fit because the Bible does say your body is your temple. So if I want to show people like what my temple really looks like, it's like this can't be it at all.
I love that. I love that you're changing also for yourself, not because somebody else said, I mean, obviously like the remark was a part of the factors, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like they said that I need to lose weight, so I'm gonna lose weight. It's
Yeah,
because like
no.
you have your own motivation.
And
And I
yeah,
get that.
at the end of the day, you only have yourself. So it's like when you wake up every day, it's like you have yourself. So it's like if you're if that's how you want to be, if you're comfortable like that, then be comfortable like that. I know for me, it's like I just wasn't comfortable. Like
Exactly.
when you're on the phone and somebody's like, "Wow, I can hear you breathing," and it's just like, "Oh man."
But yeah, I'm happy that you said that because it's so true. I've also been on a fitness journey for I guess since because I grew up a student athlete.
Yep.
And then when I got to the end of college and I realized that I was going to be transitioning into adulthood and my fitness would be my responsibility, that's when I took my journey into my own hands. And then over the years, I've lost weight, I've gained weight, I've had a baby. And so there's all these things. But I think it's really important for people, especially if you are on a fitness journey or thinking about starting one, to
Yeah.
hear that you have to decide for yourself, how do I want to look? How do I feel comfortable? Like only you can determine that because everybody's going to have a different opinion about how you should look. Maybe you should be this skinny, or maybe you good as you are, or maybe you should be a little bit bigger and thicker for the ladies. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you really have to decide for yourself, like how do I feel like my best self? Like how do I put my best foot forward? What makes me feel good in my own skin and work to be that person because that's how what you want for yourself. So important.
Yeah. So and another thing about touching on that, and it's like I heard this quote. It said as kids we look like our parents, as adults we look like our decisions. So like when you see yourself, it's like is that like those like as soon sometimes you can't blame your parents. Like once you get older, it's like you look like the decisions that you've made.
Yeah, that's real. Thanks for adding that because, yes. And also, I wanted to go back to you mentioned how you were in a relationship and she was just uncomfortable with a lot of who you are or were. And I also just want to say that when it comes to relationships, if you have to water yourself down or become somebody that you're not to sustain a relationship, then that's not the
Hmm.
relationship for you.
Yeah.
That's a really important lesson that I've had to learn myself as well. So I love to hear it from the male perspective
Yeah. Definitely.
because I feel like often I talk with other women and I know so many women that have shared about how we change ourselves for a man, but we don't always hear about the man who's changed himself for a woman, and it does
Mhm.
happen.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna go into some less serious questions now.
Okay.
So I love to travel. Um, I don't know if you're the same way or not, but if you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Um, man, there's a lot that's a tough question because it's like the world is so big. If I wanted to go anywhere, I would probably, sheesh, Ginger, you're making this very, very hard right now.
This is supposed to be the easy questions.
It's not because it's not easy because if you can go one place, it's like okay, all right, real quick, if I can go one place, I would say Cape Verde, my home, like where my family's from.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I feel like I went to college with a girl from there, but I'm not sure. But that's really awesome. And I'm the same way. I'm like, the easier question is where don't you want to go? Because I really wanted to travel the world. So
Yeah.
I get it. And is there a song that in this season you have on repeat or like a song that you just hold on to?
Yes. So it's I think the group's name is Bridging the Gap, and the song name is My Worship. And I will not be silent. I will always worship you. As long as I'm breathing, I will always worship you.
Yeah,
So every time, as soon as I get in my car, that's like, for me, that's the first song I have to play.
I love that song. I think I listened to that song, but from a different artist. But yeah, it's such a powerful song and so important to give God your worship because nobody else could do it for you. So
Definitely.
I love that song. And lastly, I like to ask for a book recommendation. So it could be either something that you're reading right now or something that you read before that just like really lit up the light bulb for you or changed something for you.
The Bible.
I knew you were going to say that. Is there a particular scripture or book that has been menacing to you recently?
Not. I'll be honest. I'm gonna say no, only because I'm still like in that beginning phase of all right. Let's like open the book. But I do know there is one verse and say I think it's seek revenge on no one, save that for me. So it's like if you want to play with God's children, you go ahead, but I'm gonna just let my father handle that business.
Yeah, I think I saw that verse recently too, but I'm not a reference girl. I know what the book says, but I'm not exactly always sure where.
Yeah,
But I,
definitely.
I feel like I saw that verse recently as well. And that's a good one. And shout out to you for getting into the word because it could be a little overwhelming when you're doing it intentionally for the first time.
Yeah,
I have
definitely.
like read my Bible over the years, but not really with a plan. And so I would like start reading and then kind of fall off. And so this year I decided to start reading my Bible every single day,
Hmm.
and I actually have a plan, and so it breaks down for every day what I'm supposed to read. And
Yep.
so it'll take me a year to read the Bible, even though you can do it in less time. But I
Yeah.
just like this a lot because it's like a couple chapters that I read each day, and it's been really good. So I'm happy to hear that you're also getting into the word, and it's definitely a game changer. So I really enjoyed our discussion. I think we hit on some really good topics, some topics that I have never really talked about before on my podcast with
Hmm.
anybody. So I'm really grateful for our conversation. Do you have anything that you would like to share with our listeners in closing? Any closing remarks, anything that you forgot to say or would like to say, or just
Yeah.
anything that God has
So
put on your
there
heart?
is there's one more quote that I always love to follow. It's nothing changes if nothing changes. And I think when we wake up every day, it's always like, well, what if what would happen if if I do this? And it's like, if you don't change nothing, nothing's gonna change for you. And I think that's like an everyday thing. Like people like Steve Harvey said, you never know what's gonna happen if you jump off the cliff unless you do it. And like in a success way, it's like a lot of people want to be successful, but you're so stuck with that 9 to 5 that you're scared to be like, well, what if I jump off and it doesn't work? The beginning is always the hardest part, but once you start to like mellow, everything will change. But yeah, if that's like one thing I would leave is nothing changes if nothing changes.
I love that. And I hope somebody is encouraged to make that change or take that jump that they've been afraid of. So thank you again so much for your time
Thank
today.
you for
I
having me. This
really,
is amazing. I love what you're doing. I love that you give people the opportunity to come on here and, share their stories, their business. I love it. It's powerful. It's great.
thank you so much. And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm happy that we had this time to talk. And yeah, I'm just grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.